All right, everyone, good evening. I have 7 o'clock. We will call this September 14th, 2022 meeting of the Brentwood Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everyone. Next up, Mr. Moran, would you please call the roll?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Sherry Bilderbeck. Here. Mark Favazza.
Here.
Matt Foreman.
Here.
Tricia Graves. Carl Carlin. Here. Jeff Hunt.
Here.
Jeff Moore. Paul Moran. Here. Hart Nelson.
Here.
John Nurnberger. Leslie Nichols. John Ritter.
Here.
Lisa Shering.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Next item of business is the approval of the agenda. This is for the Wednesday, August 10th, Planning and Zoning meeting. The minutes have been distributed. Has everyone had an opportunity to review them? Are there any changes or modifications needed? Any objection to approval of the minutes by acclamation? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. My apologies. I'm out of order already. You got to keep me honest here. They keep flipping. Next item of business, actually the previous item of business, was the approval of the agenda this evening. The agenda has also been circulated. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Motion by Mr. Moran. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Bilderback. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same side. All right, we have an agenda and approved minutes. My apologies. Next item number 5 is any citizens wishing to address the Planning and Zoning Commission on a topic that will not be covered with the agenda this evening. Do we have anyone wishing to address us? Seeing none, moving on to old business. There is no old business. That's efficiency. We're taking care of things. All right. New business. First item is P&Z 22015. This is site plan review for a new parking and access drive at 950 Hanley Industrial Court. Is the applicant or their representative here this evening? Please give us your name and your address if you won't or don't mind for the record, and tell us about your project.
Thank you. At Hoffman Brothers, and also manager of the affiliated entity that owns those 6 properties contiguous to that 1010 building up there in the industrial park. So what are we doing? We're looking to add a rear access behind the 950 building to that 1010 building, and with that, expand parking and provide that building with some additional parking. Thank you to Whitney and the team for helping us navigate some of the compliance components and code components of this plan. This is my second time doing this, the first being 1010, so I appreciate everyone's flexibility working through these things. So our primary intent is to create that rear access so that we can have better traffic flow between those 2 properties and then get additional parking for that 1010 building in the rear. And with that, there's been a few conversations that we've had as we've navigated this plan, primarily related to the larger site plan review, the lighting plan, the landscape requirements. And the landscape requirements in particular brought up surfaced an issue or something that I think will continue to be a tension in the park, which is the aesthetic redesign with the existing parking issues that exist back in the park and the lack thereof. And just to provide some context, to use this opportunity with the committee to share what we're seeing from a parking perspective. So year to date this year back in the park, we've added net about 110 net new jobs based out of these 2 project facilities. We were, up until recently, leasing about 110 parking spots from immediately contiguous neighbors. They're pulling those back as people are returning to office. We've had to create a plan and now are entering space in Westport to relocate 80 shared services jobs out of the Hanley Industrial Park because I quite literally don't have places for people to park when they show up to work. And you would almost laugh if I showed you my email inbox where there's tenants, dozens of emails a month, sometimes daily, where there's parking issues, people don't have places to park, there's concerns, there's access issues. And I wanted to just put this on your radar because it's becoming a real barrier and a constraint to be able to attract businesses and to be able to add jobs. We're quite literally at the point where every parking spot net gain or net withdrawal is literally a job I can have or not have back in that industrial park. So that's what led us to this plan at 950 to see if we could squeeze out a few additional parking spaces. The way we've submitted does comply with all of the landscape requirements that Whitney's guided us through, and as a result of that, we've had to add some additional parking islands internally, which have eaten, that building prior to this expansion had 10 parking spots for 20,000 square feet, so kind of an absurd parking ratio. And this proposal includes eating 2 of the front spots, so 20% of the existing parking for 2 additional islands to comply with landscape requirements. And then in the rear, it's taking 1 of those parking spots and adding an additional landscape island. So for a building that will have net 20 parking spaces, eating 3 of them, or 15%, is quite meaningful. And me, I love the aesthetic intent behind the landscape requirements, and we're happy to spend to reinvest in the existing green spaces and increase the appeal, the aesthetic appeal, the landscaping. If I were to request a deviation from what's submitted, it would be, and I don't know the process for this, but if every parking space matters, so if there's the ability to increase our investment in the existing green spaces without consuming parking spaces for islands, that would be my preferred route. As submitted, we have complied with the code as it's written. So I'll pause there. I think the parking issue is not something that you all are on. I think you're quite familiar with it. It's called out in the comprehensive plan. It's cited as an existing known issue. But I just wanted to call it to your attention here with respect to this submittal.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Any questions for Mr. Hoffman at this point? If not, we'll go to staff review, or to the staff notes, excuse me. All right, Ms. Kelly, over to the staff report, please.
If you just give me a minute, let's see if that's working. Okay. Whitney Kelly on behalf of the City of Brentwood. As the applicant has indicated, they are seeking new access drive along the rear of the property and new parking and landscaping for this site at 950 Hanley Industrial Court. The existing building was developed in 1976 and is zoned LI, Light Industrial District. Section 400-1390D states that site plan approval by the Board of Aldermen with recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission shall be required for all developments within the Light Industrial District. And as they're adding new parking and driveway, that brings us here tonight. The Hoffman brothers own the property to the south at 1002 Hanley Industrial Court, which got approval for a building addition in December 2020. They purchased this building, but during the construction of the addition, they added parking along the north side of that building and over the property line with this building that was not part of the initial review and did not meet the code requirements. So a condition of the approval does require that with the elimination, the lot consolidation, that eliminates the boundary line between the 2 properties and would rectify the 5-foot landscape requirements and any building separation from a property line issue. So when you're providing new landscaping and off-street parking, you have to meet the current standards of the code, which requires that there is a 5-foot buffer between the property line, any property line, and parking and access drive. There's in addition to that, there is a 10-foot requirement for interior landscaping and a requirement for a street tree for every 100 lineal feet of parking to be provided. So that is where those landscaping requirements come into. That is a code requirement, and therefore the board, this commission cannot approve any development that does not meet with that requirement. So there's the aerial photo of how it looked existing. You can see where there was green space to the south here, and the green space along the west where they're wanting to add the parking and drive out. So the site plan we have here, they do show that, and I'll show it in a minute. Here's the landscape plan. So in between the building, because they added parking here, the fire district is requesting that this trash enclosure, which is identified here in red, be relocated to meet with the trash enclosure requirements, and so that it provides the minimum 20 feet for their fire apparatus along the north side of that building. And then they are showing that the trash enclosure is angled within the front yard setback, so the requirement or a condition of approval includes that that be readjusted to not encroach within the front yard setback. So the actual section 400-1930, trash disposal and storage, states that trash should be within a solid brick, stone, or masonry or wood enclosure and positioned as to minimize visibility of the disposable site by the general public. So the condition is that that be readjusted and we can work with the applicant on finding a more appropriate location at staff level. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Any questions from the commission? Ms. Bilderbeck.
Thank you. A question of Ms. Kelly related to working at the staff level with relocating the trash enclosure. What about the trash enclosure materials?
Since the building is pre-existing, I would just do a 6-foot solid wood fence. I think that would be sufficient.
Okay, that meets with the requirements, so.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hoffman, I know you said understand the preferences, and we certainly understand that. Obviously, you've heard from staff that we do have code requirements, and so that's what we're dealing with in this situation. The other issues that have been identified, any objections to rectifying the enclosure for the trash receptacle and the other things that were mentioned in the staff report?
The enclosure, no issue. I think that's great, and I like the aesthetic improvement there. The trash dumpster, the 20-foot lineal one, sits immediately alongside 1010. I note that that's not in the recommendation section on here, but I note that it is called out in here. Just to address it, this rear drive would provide 20-foot access in the rear to every part of the rear building, and every entrance in the front, the entire front face of the building has 20-foot access. So the dumpster, where it's currently sitting, quite literally, there's only a section at the length of the dumpster that is not 20-foot access, but with this new proposed drive and with existing front access, every part of the building is accessible 20 feet. And so to move it from its current location would create operational inefficiencies because there's a direct trash chute where that exits, a high volume of material exits there and it's hauled off. And it's also aesthetically preferred to keep it in that location versus alternatively it would be out in front of the building, it would be unsightly, and it certainly wouldn't be operationally.
Ms. Kelly, because I will say I think the commission is generally loath to ignore the advice of our fire chief, so I wanted to see what the thoughts were there. Ms.
Yeah,
Kelly.
so if you look at actually under the recommendation number 5, it says the trash enclosure located for 950 Hanley Industrial Court shall be adjusted to beyond the front yard setback, and the dumpster on the north side of the building at 1002 Hanley Industrial Court be relocated to provide the minimum width necessary for fire apparatus as required by the fire department and with the requirements of section 400-1930, trash disposal and storage.
And I'm just wondering if the fire department's aware of this future plan and how that would provide 20-foot access to that entire rear of the building, even with the addition of the new drive. Because the drive dimensions are 20 feet, so the fire truck would be able to access through this new proposed drive and access every part of the rear of the facility.
Yes, I did show this to the fire chief, and they requested that the trash and dumpster, that even with the new drive access, the 20 feet needs to be provided on the north side of the building.
One alternative, if that's the position that has to be complied with, is we could no longer park at diagonal across from the dumpster, and we could convert that to parallel. We lose several additional parking spaces, but it would provide a 20-foot drive to the side. But again, there's 4 more jobs that go from that facility.
Understand. I want to make sure, obviously, we're not putting lives at risk, though, as well. And if you talk about egress and ingress for the fire department, they may need to go only that direction just because of the emergency that they're dealing with. So understand that. I will tell you, in all my time on the board, I've never seen us go against the fire department's recommendations. So, Ms. Kelly, any suggestions on that?
Yes, if you would like to if the applicant would want us to consider him adjusting the parking spaces along there to be parallel instead of 45-degree, we can look at that. We can add a condition to that section that says you can approve it as the condition is written or as adjusted per the fire.
In order to meet the 20-foot
Yeah.
20-foot requirement of the fire department.
Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. and I'm a pro-jobs person, so I understand that concern. But this public safety aspect, I think, is also important for your employees as well as the rest of us. So appreciate that. Any other questions or concerns from the commissioners? Do I have a motion on this application? Ms. Bilderback.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I may require a little assistance. Okay. I would like to recommend approval of this plan to the Board of Aldermen with the following conditions and including the most current landscape plan that shows the required landscape islands per our code requirements. And it would be with the conditions that are listed in the staff report dated September 14th. Let's see, that's the date of the report, isn't it?
That's
Or the meeting
today.
date? Yeah, September 14th, 2022. With the change being that related to the trash enclosure for the dumpster on the north side of the building at 1002 Hanley Industrial Court, that it either be relocated to provide the minimum width necessary for the fire apparatus as required by the fire department and with the requirements of section 400.1930 trash disposal and storage, or that parallel parking
Or that alternative arrangements approved by the fire marshal.
or alternative arrangements approved by the fire marshal to allow the necessary ingress and egress for the fire equipment be provided.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Moran. Roll call, please.
Sherry Bilderback,
Yes.
Mark Favazza,
Yes.
Matt Foreman,
Yes.
Carl Carlin,
Yes.
Jeff Hunt,
Yes.
Paul Moran, yes. John Ritter,
Yes.
Lisa Shering.
Yes.
It's unanimous, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Mr. Hoffman, thank you. I understand the challenges, and I really appreciate Hoffman keeping their business here and growing in Brentwood. We appreciate it.
Thank you all, I appreciate it. Am I required for anything else tonight?
You're good. Have a good evening. Oh, hold on.
Just so you know, this
Miss-
will be forwarded to the Board of Aldermen at their October 3rd meeting.
Thank you.
We're the first stop. Ms. Bilderback's always very careful to make sure that it is a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen. Next up, under new business is B, planning and zoning, this is number 22016, a conditional use permit for Honeybee Tea Restaurant located within the Deerberg's Brentwood Point Shopping Center. The tenant address is 8558 Eager Road. Is the applicant here this evening? Or the representative? Please state your name for the record and tell us about your project.
Good evening. I'm Alva Levine. I'm the architect for the tenant Honeybee Tea. The tenant is here, Hai Tang, who runs Honeybee Tea, and this would be their second location, and also a representative from the general contractor. This is an existing tenant space in the shopping center. It had been a food service space earlier, and it's a perfect space for this tenant. It's a small drink-type restaurant. It's mostly takeout, although there'll be a couple of tables for people to stay. And tenant can tell you more about boba tea, if you're interested in hearing about it. But we think this is a perfect location, and it fits right in. I think Whitney will be able to give her report in more detail so that I won't eat up a lot of time.
I appreciate that. I think it's fairly straightforward. Ms. Kelly, if we'll go right to staff report, please.
So I don't have a PowerPoint for you. This is relatively an easy review. They are taking a tenant space within an existing shopping center, restaurants, and in this case, drinking boba tea would require a conditional use permit. It's in the same shopping center where we reviewed the parking earlier this year for Scissors and Scotch. So with this tenant, they have a surplus, I'm showing the surplus of 142 spaces on this site. So therefore, we don't have any issues and recommend approval.
Is there any outdoor seating with this with this new tenant, or is it only indoor seating?
There's no outdoor seating.
No outdoor, no change, okay. Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Any questions for the petitioner or for staff from the commission this evening? If not,
Or his T-shirt to show off the honeybee tea, but
please, let's take a look. Yes, we definitely need to see the T-shirt. Excellent, we appreciate it. It is. Ms. Bilderbeck.
I actually do know what this tea is. I think it's fabulous, and I think this is a perfect addition to the area. Your branding, by the way, is awesome. Your shirt's cool, and this honeybee on your signage inside is really great. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
At this point, I'd entertain a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Move to recommend approval of the conditional use permit for Honeybee Tea within the Deerberg's Brentwood Point Shopping Centre at the address of 8558 Eager Road, as discussed in this meeting by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Faza. Roll call vote, please.
Sherry Bilderbeck,
Yes.
Martha Faza,
Yes.
Matt Foreman,
Yes.
Carl Carlin,
Yes.
Jeff Hunt,
Yes.
Paul Moran, yeah. John Ritter,
Yes.
Lisa Sharing.
Yes.
That's also unanimous, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Appreciate it. Thank you for choosing us here in Brentwood. And as Ms. Kelly will note,
Yes.
please.
This will be scheduled for a public hearing at the Board of Aldermen meeting on their October 3rd meeting. So,
October already. Our next item of business is P&Z 22017. This is a conditional use permit for RRT Restaurants LLC, does business as Sal y Limon Mexican Grill Restaurant located within the former Houlihans at Hanley Station. This is 1221 Strassner. Is the petitioner here this evening? Please come forward and give us your name and tell us about your project.
Hello, everyone. First of all, my name is Christina Robles. I am the CEO and Managing Officer for RRT Restaurants LLC. We acquired the former Houlihans restaurant location in preparation of Sal y Limon Mexican Grill.
Excellent. Tell us about your project.
Sure thing. Sorry. My first time doing this. So,
Not a problem.
we acquired the location, and we hope to be open sometime between the beginning or middle of November, but we do have a firm date of December 1. What we're doing right now with the project is we're basically doing some cosmetic changes inside. We wanted to completely remove people's minds from Houlihans Restaurant and show what we have. So cosmetic being some painting inside of the restaurant. What else are we gonna do? So we're gonna add some TVs, things like that. Our focus is, of course, Mexican food. Forgive me. In addition to that, not much else is going on the inside, but on the outside of the restaurant, we are looking, well, we did get approval from the POA to change the color of the exterior. It's going to be a medium gray. It's about a 50% gray on scale. And then wherever there's currently red, or I think it's wherever there's red, like on the stack where the Houlihans H's are, we'll put a lime color. And I'm guessing you guys all have a picture of that, but I did bring some boards just in case. But that's the gist of it.
Got some samples as well. Yep.
yeah, sorry to interrupt, but she did provide color samples, so I will pass those around
Thank you.
for your.
Excellent. Anything else?
Unless you ask me, because I'm a little bit nervous. This is my first
Not a
time in
problem.
front of you guys, so
Not a problem.
I'm not sure what the what I'm supposed to say. So.
That's it. Just, again, tell us about the project. I think we're there. What we'll do is go to staff report then, Ms. Kelly, and then we can ask questions after we hear that from the commission. So thank you.
Yes, So as the applicant has indicated, they are leasing the former Houlihans space. It was developed along with the Hanley Station development as a planned unit development that included 2 restaurants, the hotel, the condos, and other various retail establishments in that area. The parking was considered at that time, and as they're using the site largely as it is with the same approximate number of seating, I don't have an issue with the parking provided. The issue that was raised in the staff report is the color change to the exterior of the building. As it was all developed under one planned development, this would be out of character with the other buildings in the development. In addition to that, the sign code does say include the use of color forming an integral part of the background or display or used to differentiate a sign from the backdrop or structure against which it is placed is included part of the sign area. As part of the Hanley Station development, they are under a comprehensive sign plan that did grant this tenant up to 300 square feet in total signage for all 4 sides of the building in total, not 300 on each side. Therefore, they would be entitled that. The question for your consideration tonight is whether the color change of the lime adds to that sign and therefore would make that even larger. So they would either have to come back for a change to the comprehensive sign plan when they propose signage for the building to include the lime color, or you should have a discussion with the use of colors with the applicant. Yeah.
Anything else, Ms. Kelly?
That was the only condition for your discussion. So.
I appreciate it. And I think that obviously is going to be something that we want to talk about and a little concern. This was approved as a development. Can you help us understand the choice of colors? Is this something that is a brand color or just something to basically, as you noted, draw attention? This isn't a Houlihans anymore, and we want to make sure that we're stepping away from that. But is there a particular reason for those choice of colors and changing from what was already approved by the commission?
Sure thing. So sal y limon in Spanish means salt and lime. So we drew from the limon aspect from the name. We thought that it would be a good signature for the restaurant that people driving along Hanley would know, oh, that's the place, right, to go. So we understand that it was a bit of a risk to ask for this. When I discussed it with the association, they seemed to understand and began to feel much more comfortable about it. I realized that it did step out from what they might have agreed to back in, I believe, 2006 when this was erected. But hopefully I conveyed my point as we are in the 2020s. Maybe they might consider something like that. And I'm not sure about the other buildings around, if they were planning to paint, and maybe it opens dialogue, if anything else, which could be a good thing.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'll open up to questions from the commission. Ms. Bilderbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually am going to date myself. I was on the commission when this property came through. We spent an incredible amount of time on this as a master development, as a planned development for the entire thing, and it was very cohesive. I, for one, I have concerns, and I do think that anything that's painted like that is part of if it's part of the sign, that it should be considered part of the sign, and that would impact, what would have to be submitted as a change underneath the sign code. Setting, or the approved comprehensive sign plan for this development as part of the overall approval of this development originally. Setting that aside for the moment, just addressing the colors, I do have a concern about it, and I don't think it's consistent with the rest of the development. I can understand wanting a change. I note that the intended colors of yellow, orange, and red are the replacement colors for the large canvas umbrellas on the patio. So my suggestion would be to eliminate the lime on the building and have exterior building colors more in line and in keeping with what's in the rest of this overall plan development, because it's not a standalone outlot. It's supposed to be tied in with the rest of these properties. So my suggestion would be, if you want the lime in there, is to, instead of having yellow, orange, and red large canvas umbrellas on the patio to do lime in the umbrellas instead to incorporate that.
Sure, I also want to add, we have changed our mind and about the umbrellas. We'll be removing the umbrellas. They're way too much above our budget. So we're probably gonna end up doing nice pergolas out there and give it a really lofty kind of feel out there for the patio for our customers. So with,
For pergolas, I would ask Ms. Kelly, like, I mean, that's part of an exterior structure. I mean, that's something that needs to be before us, isn't it, for this consideration?
I would say yes, that would be considered a change to the exterior of the building as well, and we would probably need to review that. If you're doing a built structure along the front, that's something that we needed to review as part of your application.
okay, that was a decision that we just talked about this week. There's no way that we would give $16,000 to put up 3 umbrellas. There's just not a way to do that. But I want to give, customers, so I understand that that's something that we may have to talk about. I wanted to throw that out there tonight, because the umbrellas are not going to work.
We could approve the proposal as it's presented with your recommendation on the colors, but the pergola, the pergola could be reviewed later as an amendment to the site plan and if they choose to pursue that further.
So for me, related to the colors, it really, in my mind, I mean, we spend an incredible amount of time on this. It's a signature development in the city of Brentwood, and it's a fantastic development. And if you want to use your branding colors, they could be used in the signs. You know, if you want to do something other than Houlihans red, to me, it should be consistent with the rest of the development, and lime isn't consistent with the rest of the development. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bidlock. Ms. Bilderback, Mr. Carlin.
Thanks. This is probably another one of those multi-pronged kind of questions. So first, just because I wasn't present at that approval process years ago, was the Houlihans red, was that part of the overall color aesthetic for the whole development, or was that branding specific to them at that time?
I'd have to do research. When I did look at the original development, it was, and if you look on page 7 of the staff report, all of the buildings have the red and tan with the stacked stone elements. So I don't know if it was specific branding for Houlihans or if it was just to how all of the buildings, because they all have that similar color scheme.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to the question, but it's clearly a branding element when you drive by it. It's clearly there to draw attention. So the use of it in this, and again, we can get to the colors in a second, but the use of it in that context is consistent in my mind with the original intent of the building, because it's clearly a big color bar to pull your eye in there, right? That's one thing. And again, with total respect for the work done previously by the board and the other applicants, I'm at least conceptually open to seeing a color change that, is, if harmonious is the wrong word, like, sympathetic or simpatico with, with the other projects. I worry that this discussion, might be hard to resolve in this forum without other information, so I don't know if this is appropriate for the site plan discussion.
Yep.
And I say that because I'm open to the idea that this could work, at least individually, but maybe it's the seeing it in context that we need to be able to really understand if it's a big issue or not. I don't think I can tell quite from the pencil sketch and the photo of the old buildings. So I would maybe, it's not a movement time yet, but I would think maybe if we had to have this conversation, we'd take it to site plan and further discuss it, so.
Thank you, Mr. Carlin. Ms. Kelly?
I could also propose a compromise as well, that if the board is okay with the lime accent on the towers, keeping the other areas of the building existing in the color scheme would better tie it into the rest of the development, the tan, instead of painting that the gray, keeping that the tan color that is existing there. That could be an option that y'all might want to consider if you feel comfortable with the lime, or that is something we can look at as part of the site plan subcommittee.
I do, excuse me, I do have boards, if that's more helpful for you
I
guys.
think those would be helpful to look at and take a look as well. But just other commissioners with questions?
Another historic question that I'm not sure anyone can answer except maybe Sherry. With the Buffalo Wild Wings, it looks like, is that considered part of this development?
I'm not sure.
Across from Twin Oak on
Yeah.
the corner. It's by Aspen Dental.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I feel like the buildings in that other section all have their own distinguished colors. Like Aspen Dental has the blue, Buffalo
That's
Wild
what
Wings
I-
has the black and the
I
gold.
pulled up the 3D map, and Buffalo Wild Wings has a vertical element much like this that's branded their color.
So is it
It's
safe
not.
to
It's-
say,
it
Sherry,
was-
that the buildings across the street were not part of the master
Not part of it.
development of this?
Two restaurants and the garage and the Marriott. Those are the four that are part of it. It was the two restaurants, not four.
And we have
The-
ordinances here.
The Aspen Dental was also an amendment to the original CUP. I have that in the notes. 1801 through 1819 was an ordinance that amended the CUP for ordinance number 4854 for the dental offices. So I don't know where those are, how they fit in either.
Looking at the Hanley station right now. And I would note that the existing building, I'd forgotten this, does have the gray on the northern end of the development.
Another comment, if it's appropriate.
Yes, please.
Just thinking forward to other large development which is coming our way. You know, there's going to always be this balance between what the overall development needs to stay cohesive and then also what the individual businesses need to be successful. So, thank you. I think in this case, it's not necessarily a precedent setter, but it's worth considering that balance as we make our deliberations, I think. Like, what does an individual business need to identify itself and survive without, you know, going against the larger, more cohesive vision we're trying to implement for the city? Which is why, again, I suggest maybe it requires a little bit more deliberation than we can potentially pull off in this meeting, so.
Mr. Moran?
Would that, if we had a site plan in 2 weeks, could that also handle the pergola change? And we could lump it all into that one meeting?
We could, if she can get us revised drawings, we can certainly consider it at that meeting too.
You haven't been through the process. Let me explain what we're talking about with site plan
Sure thing.
review. So we meet every month. Our recommendations go to the Board of Aldermen, as you've heard a couple times tonight. We have another thing called site plan review, where we don't have to be up here on this dais, and we can actually have a conversation and look at plans and kind of put our heads together and try to figure out how we can get to something that works for your business, that works for the commission, and what we're trying to accomplish with the consistency of the code. It's a little more informal, and then we would come back to our next regular meeting. Everything's ready. We approve it and move forward. So that's what a site plan review is talking about.
Okay.
It's so that we can actually have a little bit more discussion. And I do think that part of that is being able to have the pergola conversation, but also to kind of take a look at that overall development. And again, I'm noting and looking at seeing, for example, the gray. There is gray in the existing structure, but it is very much a reds and the stacked stone and brick. So it's, you know, kind of what could work with for that. I think balancing, as was mentioned before, your desire to brand the business, draw attention in, with the fact that we want this to look complementary to the development that was there and what was approved before. So, Ms. Bilderbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So related to these buildings right here that all work with the garage, I mean, you have essentially the residential and these two buildings and the garage, and they all really work together. So I think it's important that these three buildings fit together as part of this discussion, and there is that red brick. So I think that that's really important. And there was one other thing I was just thinking that I wanted to mention. Something about, goodness, I just totally lost it. My apologies. Hang on just a second. I just completely spaced. It'll come back to me. Apologies.
I definitely know the feeling. So I do have a little question, just so I can kind of gain a little bit of knowledge here. So with Houlihans, if we bounce back real quick, was the red part of their signage? I'm not sure that that was answered.
Yeah, I mean, the design itself was approved as part of the overall two things, the overall design and the architecture that was approved, and the second part was the comprehensive sign plan. It was included within that because the signage was done at one time. And so that would be the question of, are we looking for a modification of the comprehensive sign plan, which would require the property owners to submit it, everything again, which I know you'd had a conversation with them, or is this something that we could see as architectural, really, rather than part of the sign plan? I think that's part of the discussion we need to have. Right, what's in front of us is not a change to the comprehensive sign plan.
I remembered.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Elevations, the original elevations, I did not keep mine from 2004. Do we have any? Or Mr. Checkley might be able to provide the original elevations?
We could certainly ask him for that. I digged through the file. I did not see specific elevations for the Houlihans, but all of the other buildings had the similar brick, the red and thing. The comprehensive sign plan just had the H as part of their signage on the towers. It did not include the color. So,
And the red tied in with, I mean, that whole development area, I mean, you could see it with the brick. It was an intentional tie-in to what was happening with the rest of the project. So I think also we have to be super aware of the precedent related to, you know, the signage and the expansion of signage with the colors too, because we've got other massive developments in Brentwood that could come back and want to change to their properties. A lot of big box stores. One of the worst mistakes that we ever made, and it's a long story as to why and how this happened and how it played out, was the Best Buy sign. Give them a little PR here, but the blue wall, it was a bone of contention. It was a really hot item, and we had a lot of negative feedback about it. So I think, you know, when you look at the signage question related to the colors, I think we do have to be really careful not to establish a precedent where we could end up with, you know, partial facades coming in from some of the big box retailers in the city of Brentwood wanting to have the same thing. Well, if this restaurant got it on their sign, then, and they were able to do that, and it wasn't part of the sign itself and didn't count on their wall sign square footage, then, you know, we should have it too. And I would say that when we did the sign plan related to this, and it was a comprehensive sign plan because they got to put much more than what the code would have allowed for, that the signage on this building is generous as it is. So it's not like they have a lack of signage. I mean, they're going to have signs on every wall of this building. So just some additional points for consideration as we go forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate that. Any other comments? I think sorry, please.
Yeah.
Mr. Hunt.
Related to that sign question, is any, and I think the answer is probably not, any of the signage going to be on the elements that are currently lime on your elevations, or will they more likely be on the ethos or whatever that is that's painted gray?
Sure. So we're not going to have any signage on that. The only thing that we discussed was doing what they call up and down lighting. Where the H's are, we would replace that. That's what we're thinking. I'm not sure what that's going to look like yet. I really need to get that from my sign guy, see if it looks right. But with respect to wherever those Houlihans, where the Houlihan signage is, we'll mostly replace those. There's one wall, like on the west side that's closest to the trash dumpster area. We're not going to replace that one. We're just going to take it off. And then instead of signage there, we will have a non-lit sign above the entrance that customers would walk in. So that was discussed with my sign vendor. With respect to the other signs, those will be replaced with our signs. So 3 that will be lit, 1 that will not.
Ms.
With
Kelly.
the uplighting, that would need to be reviewed as well, and so I would suggest if if you could have that ready for the site plan subcommittee. Our code requires that lighting shall be downcast and not uplighted to create a hazard, so we would need to review that type of lighting as well.
We're certainly open to just doing downlighting. So if it will take one thing off of the list, I can certainly replace it with downlighting. Or if that's still an issue, we can definitely address it.
I would bring it to the site plan subcommittee so that we can review that.
Just for reference, there are ways to light a surface uplight without shooting past the surface, so it's doable.
Right, we don't exactly want planes to, yeah.
Unless they're coming in to get something to eat.
Exactly.
Which we weren't worship. I think that I'm getting the mood of the commission that we're looking to move this to site plan to subcommittee, which isn't really much of a subcommittee since it's all of us are on it. And so that would be, what do we have here? That would be the 28th, is that correct? 6 p.m. the 28th. Are you available at 6 p.m. on the 28th here in this actually, no, we'll be over the rec center, or we will do that here?
We'll do that here.
Okay. I keep forgetting that we're
think
not in
so,
construction
yes.
anymore. Okay. And again, the intent was us for able to talk through, for you to be thinking about what are some other opportunities there in terms of what's been expressed of how do we tie into the overall development. But understanding that you have a aggressive schedule, we want you open. And having more dining options within Brentwood is always a great thing, so we appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? We will take a motion to move to site plan subcommittee, but Ms. Bilderbeck.
One thing, is there anything else that you're considering that you haven't mentioned? Like if there is, then you want to shake the trees and bring it next time so you don't slow down your process.
Yes.
Most definitely. So I know like with the city of St. Louis, when where my other restaurant is located, as long as we didn't build on site, we were good. There were no issues. So what I want to know is if we can get through the pergola issue, I don't think that our plans would be to build on site. However, come to think of it, it's a pretty big thing. So we'd probably have to bolt a few things together, but it's not like we would be doing running tools over there. So I guess my question is, what if the pergola was accepted, what would be the best route for me to take? And if that's taking away from the purpose of this meeting, we can address that on the 28th.
I think that's something you'll want to have a conversation with Ms. Kelly about for building
Okay.
code, those sorts of things. Yep. Beyond our purview.
Okay.
All right. Do I have a motion?
I'll try. Can we move move this into site planning on the 28th?
Second.
A motion and a second. Don't think we need a roll call on this. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same side. All right, so we will see you again on the 28th at 6 p.m. Appreciate the application. Thanks for
you.
working with us, and
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you. Next up, the Aldermanic Report. Seeing no one running towards the microphone, we move over to the Director's Report.
We do have a couple of applications for our October meeting, and this one will obviously come back to us. The Mark Twain has submitted, elementary school has submitted, they're doing a renovation and an addition on their building, so that will be forward. And we have a CUP that was approved in 2020. She slowly proceeded, but never officially opened, so the code requires that
Review.
a re-review, so that should be a really easy review. So it was strictly pediatrics, a daycare facility. I forget the address off the top of my head, but it was for children with health care issues, or health issues. Yes, it was, I believe, on Strasner, 1400 Strasner.
Am I recalling correctly that as a separate political subdivision of the state of Missouri, the elementary school review is not necessarily courtesy, but it is something that they also, that they can, their board has their own vote on it. Is that correct?
They do have their own vote. The state does require Planning and Zoning Commission review of any building code issues, zoning issues such as parking.
Yeah, health and safety I know, but they
Health and
can overrule
safety.
us if they want. And some
Can
things.
overrule the board if
We'll not
they
do that.
choose to, yeah.
All right. All right. Anything else? Oh, sorry, yes.
Just to clarify, the land use issues they can reject your recommendation by a majority, supermajority.
Supermajority, yeah.
But health and safety codes.
Yep.
We are controlling on that.
I don't think that their board would get past health and safety issues either, so. All right. Anything else from the commission? I thank everyone. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A motion to have a second? We'll stand adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Oh,
Of course.
So I'm trying to understand the redevelopment of the $400 million project. I have a building in the path of all of that. How can I work with the city to make sure that
Recording.
we've been in business for 35 years? I really want to work with the city. I really want to stay. How do I go about doing that? I've been to all the meetings.